NBC News election coverage continues. And here once again is Chet Huntley.
The popular vote. We have been here now for 12½ hours by my reckoning, and we still don't know who the next president of the United States is. But as far as we've been able to progress, there it is. 83% of the national vote is in. Humphrey has 43% of it, and Nixon has 43% of it, with a slight edge going to Nixon. There are now 4 states still undetermined. There are 7 states, actually, still undetermined. But in 4 of them, Nixon holds a current advantage. Let's take a look at them. Alaska is the first one. 30% of the Alaskan vote is in, and it gives an advantage to Mr. Nixon of 47%, with 43% for Humphrey. California, 55% of that vote is in, and 55% of that vote has been there for at least an hour or hour and a half. And Mr. Nixon there holds a very thin advantage, 47% to 46% for Humphrey. Illinois is another key one, in which Nixon currently holds a slight advantage. But in the percentage column, as you can see, the two are just about equal, but an advantage in numbers of about 45,000 in behalf of Nixon. And in Ohio, 94% of the Ohio vote is in, and indeed has been in for several hours. But the numbers and the percentages give a slight advantage to Mr. Nixon. 45% for Nixon, 43% for Humphrey. David?
Well, let's look at the electoral totals, because that's where the election will be decided. And when we do, we see that Nixon has 195 electoral votes, Humphrey has 137, and Wallace 45. John Chancellor is sitting over there with some kind of marvelous and perhaps magic machine with him. But about 5 minutes ago, he used a pencil and a yellow pad and deduced that Humphrey... Oh, didn't you?
Yes, I did, but I'm revising the figures, and I have them ready, but they're not quite what I gave you, because I've been used to this machine.
I was very impressed with them, and I was about to repeat them.
Well, I think you ought to be careful. That's why I've asked to come back on as soon as I can. I have them ready now if you want to go through.
All right, go
ahead. The position we're in now is that it looks as though it's going to be very, very difficult for Hubert Humphrey to win a majority in the Electoral College. Let's take as our figures the 7 states which are still unsettled in this election. Texas, Pennsylvania, and Missouri lean toward Nixon at this moment. He's a little bit ahead in them. Now he has toward Humphrey. Humphrey has 137 electoral votes. If we give him the states he's leading in now, that will bring his electoral total to 203 votes, which is still 67 votes short of a majority in the Electoral College. So to win, Humphrey would need to carry Texas, Pennsylvania, and Missouri. They're all leaning toward him now a little bit. And then to pick up California, plus either Ohio or Illinois, plus Alaska. If he missed on Alaska and got either Ohio or Illinois, he'd get 269 electoral votes and would lose the election. Now, Nixon is in a much stronger position. I said a little while ago that he might make it without California. He has to have California to make it, as I see it. But if we take his 195 electoral votes that he has now, and we put in Alaska leaning to him, Ohio, he's ahead, Illinois, he's a little bit ahead, California, he's a little bit ahead, that brings his electoral vote total to 290 votes. So that Richard Nixon, as it stands now, can lose either Ohio or Illinois and Alaska and still come in and win this election with 271 electoral votes. So California is still essential to either man, but the odds are getting very long on Hubert Humphrey being able to pull this one off. And that's where we stand now.
As I say, I found that analysis impressive and was about to repeat it. But since you have, I don't need to. Thank you. And now we're going to look at Missouri, Pennsylvania, and Texas, 3 of the remaining undecided states. First, Missouri. 94% of it is in. It's very close. There's a difference of about 11,000 votes. Humphrey has 45%, Nixon 44%. It is so close that we are unable to project the outcome in Missouri. In Pennsylvania, Humphrey has a small lead, has had for some time, 47% to Nixon's 45%. That also is too close to call, and so we're not calling it. And Texas, 85% of Texas has been counted. Humphrey has a lead there of 3 percentage points. Let's go back to Pennsylvania, where I think something is about to happen. In fact, I know something is about to happen. No, not there. NBC News now projects Humphrey to be the winner in Pennsylvania. And the projection is that when all the votes are added, all of them are counted, he will come out with 47%. Now let's look at the electoral board. Have you got it up there yet?
No, it hasn't been added. So
it's not there yet. So add Pennsylvania's 29 votes to Humphrey's 137, that gives 156, 166. And 13 states for 166 votes, and that leaves 6 undecided.
So it's as Chancellor said, it's more and more concentration on California, with Pennsylvania now going to Humphrey. It's our attention and on the significant centers on California.
I think it was 11 or 12 o'clock last night when somebody said it was very likely to come down to California, and it's becoming increasingly apparent that's what might happen.
Yes, Jack.
Here, now that Humphrey has taken Pennsylvania, if he holds on to Missouri and he holds on to Texas, and he picks up either Ohio, Illinois, or California, he will throw it into the House of Representatives.
Okay.
And it's a distinct possibility, yeah.
We'll be back in a moment.
American Motors introduces the Ambassador SST.
I'm here to pick up the Winthrops.
The Ambassador offers a longer wheelbase for that posh limousine ride. Velvet velour seats and air conditioning is standard equipment. It's the popular priced car that will pass for a limousine. The Ambassador will get you through the gate.
I completely agree with you. Portofino this time of year is a dreadful ball.
After that, you're on your own.
Gentlemen, I assure you, Mrs. Van Dome hadn't lost her contact lenses in the car. It would never happen. I know I speak for my host when I say that...
Well, we are down now to 6 states where no decision can yet be made. Nixon is leading in 4 of them. Humphrey is leading in 2. Nixon is leading in Illinois, Ohio, Alaska, and California. Humphrey has a slight lead in Missouri and Texas. And the electoral vote standing is 195 for Nixon and 166 for Humphrey, 45 for Wallace. Now to Herbert Kaplow at the Nixon headquarters in New York.
I am in the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, where just a few hours ago there was quite a bit of activity. Several hundred Nixon supporters waiting here, hoping for a victory that has so far eluded them, although the situation certainly looks better for the former vice president than it does for the present vice president. Mr. Nixon is in his suite on the 35th floor of this hotel, presumably sleeping at this point. We were told a few hours ago that there would be no further information from the Nixon camp until about 10 o'clock Eastern time this morning. That would be about 3 hours from now. The reason for that seems to be obvious. They want to know more about California. They are waiting for that to be the decisive clincher for them. Illinois and Ohio. They figure they will win. They certainly feel they have to win, even though they are now leading by only slight margins. And if they do win those two, then it will be up to the 40 electoral votes of California to put Richard Nixon over the top and win him the presidency in his second try for it. Herbert Kaplow, NBC News, at Nixon headquarters in New York.
Have you any idea why California is so slow in coming? Polls closed 8 hours ago, and we only have 55% of it.
The risk of getting some very bad fan mail that you mentioned earlier, I sometimes wonder if some of these states don't hold back their votes on purpose because it creates some consternation. The name gets mentioned very frequently, and it causes quite a stir. I don't know. We speculated earlier that maybe those Los Angeles County ballots were still somewhere piled up in trucks navigating down the freeway to go to the counting machine.
Well, I could have walked over there by now.
Hubert Humphrey's headquarters are in a Minneapolis hotel, and NBC News correspondent Jack Perkins is there. Jack?
Chet, this is the ballroom where it looks like the party is over. And Mr. Humphrey, of course, is up in his room and is presumably sleeping. We don't know. About 4 hours ago, he stood at this podium and said that, quote, "I feel sufficiently at ease to get a good night's rest." And he went up to his room, and it was said that he was going then to go to sleep. I don't know whether he can sleep through tonight or not. But since then, we have heard nothing publicly from him, and we are not expecting to hear anything more from him for at least 3 hours. From some of his friends and aides, we have heard a few comments, and they are words of discouragement. Jack Perkins, NBC News, the Leamington Hotel, Humphrey headquarters in Minneapolis.
Sorry, we were unable to get the picture, but verbally, I think you got the picture at any rate. To Sander Van Oker.
Chet, we still have those 4 races undecided. They haven't changed in the last half hour. In Iowa, with 95% of the vote now counted, we still find it too close to project. Governor Harold Hughes leads David Stanley, the state legislator, by 15,000 votes. It's 2 percentage points that divide him. I guess we'll have to get to 99% before we can make a projection or make a decision. In the state of Iowa, John Gilligan has closed the gap. The state of Iowa. Come back, Iowa. Ohio. No, we had Iowa. Let's go over to Ohio. That's over the other way. Well, anyhow, in Ohio, John Gilligan is running behind Bill Saxby, the Attorney General of the state, by 2 percentage points, but he has closed the gap. It was 100,000 before. It's about 50,000, less than 50,000 now. In the state of Oregon, where Senator Wayne Morris was seeking his 5th term, he has run behind state legislator Robert Packwood all evening long. And again, there 2 percentage points divide these 2 men. In the state of Alaska, it is much too early and much too close there to call that race. Mike Gravel, the Democrat, leads Elmer Rasmussen. The Republican, Ernest Greening, the man that Gravel beat in the primary, is not doing too well with his writing campaign. We're not even sure that writing campaign is legal. Frank?
Thank you, Sander. We had 21 governor's races. We have projected winners in 18 of them, meaning that 3 of the governor's races remain unsettled at this hour. And here is where they stand, beginning with Arkansas. 65% of the vote counted. Percentage standpoint, an even division, 50-50, a difference of about 1,000 votes for Republican Rockefeller over Democrat Frank. Another undecided race is in Illinois. Now, with 80% of the vote counted, the Republican Ogilvie has about 344,000 votes over the Democratic incumbent Shapiro. And the reason we're holding off on this is for more tabulation of returns from Chicago, where 1/3 of the vote in Illinois comes from. It has been running heavily in favor of Shapiro, But the last word we had was that less than half of the vote from Chicago had been counted, so we're holding off on that one. The remaining unresolved contest is in New Mexico. 92% of the vote counted, percentage even, 50-50, a difference of about 2,000 votes there in favor of the Republican incumbent Dave Cargo. So the remaining three races, the Republicans lead in all three, but they held two of them going into the election this year, so they stand to make a net gain in what remains open of only one. Of the 18 races that we've called, 10 have gone to the Republicans, 8 to the Democrats, representing a net gain so far of 4. If the trend, as we've just seen, continues, they would pick up one more for a net gain of 5. Edwin?
Well, we've been saying from the beginning of the evening, and it didn't take any great perspicacity to do so, that there were two questions to follow in the House. One was which party would control the House, that is to say, which party would have the greater number of members, and the other question was which party would control the state delegations, a matter of consequence in case the presidential election went there. Well, nominally, the Democrats now control enough to elect a president. If the election goes into the House, they have 26, the Republicans have 15. 5 are tied. There are 4 more to go. But remember that of those 26, a number of them are in the South, including 5 that went to George Wallace for the presidency. That doesn't count South Carolina, which Richard Nixon took. So if it does go into the House, those figures mean less than they appear to, and I guess I've said that often enough now, and that's sufficiently understood. It must have been clear to you that the lights were going out all over the NBC studio. One was tempted to say one didn't know when they'd go back on again, but they went back on very quickly. So let's go to another board, the recap board. As you can see, the Democrats have won 240 seats, the Republicans 184. The Republicans have gained 3. The Democrats are assured of a majority. They are already 22 seats past the needed 218, and we think they're going to get a few more. And we're going to show them the projection board as well. There it is. We think the Democrats will get 243, the Republicans 192, net gain of 4 for the Republicans. Terrible disappointment for them. Surprisingly gratifying performance by the Democrats in the House. The people have evidently said they like the House about the way it is now, just with its political balance as it is now. They don't want any changes. Now, we'll be back in a minute.